in regards to the built environment for Huron Township. I haven't been in this high school for probably 30 years, and a guy named, some of you may remember, a guy named Kenny Boker destroyed me at a wrestling match. This is the last time I was in here, so it's nice to see a good crowd here. The Township Board wanted to have this meeting. I said, don't have it tomorrow, it's opening day of Tiger, so here it is, and we've got a great turnout. So I appreciate that. I always appreciate when residents come out for knowledge and education and understanding the process, because what you're going to hear tonight is not the most exciting information in regards to planning and zoning and how that all works. Some of you have gone through the process. I see some familiar faces who've gone through either the building department or the planning department, or looking to develop a farmer's market or a different use. So I do know many of you, but in regards to the process, what I'm going to talk to you about is basically planning and zoning 101 that is required via enabling legislation through the state of Michigan. So everything that we're talking about tonight is permitted through the state of Michigan through certain laws in regards to zoning, planning, master planning. So when I say slide, I'm going to look up there and Luke's going to change the slide for me, and then we're going to walk through this. I've got about 20 minutes, 25 minutes of discussion on planning and zoning. As the supervisor said, this is the first, I believe, of several future educational seminars in regards to what's happening in Huron Township, what's the process. We're going to be talking about things in the future, such as one thing that I've heard for many years is rural and farmland preservation. That's how do we do that? How do we, as a community, preserve the rural character in Huron Township? And there's tools to do that, but that's going to be discussed at a future one. And there'll be other classes, and we'll call them classes, or more workshops or town hall meetings. Lots of things happening in downtown in Boston. So let's get started. I want to talk about planning and zoning. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we're talking, this session is more of the Township Board wanting to keep the township residents informed and engaged. They have been talking about that for several months and are starting that process. This is the first of many, like I mentioned. And this makes sense to talk about data centers because, one, the township has put a 6-month moratorium on that type use. And so what does that mean? Well, for 6 months, no one can propose or submit any kind of data center in Huron Township. Because right now, we're beginning the process of creating an ordinance. And I'm going to talk to you about that process. How do we create this ordinance? So this moratorium, as enacted by the board, says to the outside world, hey, don't come to Huron Township with a data center because you can't submit it formally, it's not permitted, and we're working on ordinance language, and when that ordinance language is done, you may want to come. So I guess I preface that by saying, because I heard it a couple times, there, at least the board and myself, and there is no proposal for a data center in the township, there is no formal application, there's no conversation. I think Mr. Girdwood's going to talk about that as well. So today we're just trying to be, I think, proactive in regards to the process. And so let's go to the next slide, please. I don't have a clicker, so you can hear me say that the whole time. We're going to talk about the role of planning and zoning. As a township planner, what does that mean? My grandmother always called me a township planter. She can never understand what do you do as a planner. Well, I provide advice and opinions based on many other communities that I assist, based on that legislation, based on the zoning ordinance, the master plan, and other downtown tools like the DDA, TIFA, along South Huron, those kinds of things. We're going to talk about legal and policy considerations because, unfortunately, in today's world, it's very litigious, and it's not unusual for a township to be sued for decision-making based on ordinance or master plan. And so it's important that township understand that when they're making these decisions that they're following the law, following the advice of our counselor in regards to making proper decisions, because once it gets into court, it's kind of out of our hands. We do our best to defend it, but it gets out of our hands, and it's us against them kind of thing. We're going to talk about how we get through the zoning process. We're going to move on to data centers and some of the things that we're going to be looking at the planning commission level. If you're a planning commissioner, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you're a planning commissioner in a township, can you raise your hand? I know there's a few of you here, and thank you for being here. So that's a body as appointed by the board who's gonna help with this ordinance. And then finally, we're gonna talk about community input, allow for some comments and some questions. And as the supervisor indicated, we're gonna take those questions, we're gonna try to boil them down like making sausage, incorporate those into an ordinance for data centers. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what is this role, what is this planning and zoning? So if you've ever had the opportunity to either build in the township or build a commercial use, you use the zoning ordinance. That booklet, and it's not the most exciting reading, is the law of what you can do on your individual property. So even if you have a piece of residential property, the zoning ordinance, and most of our township is zoned R1, and that's called suburban residential. That's a minimum lot size of 1 acre and 110 foot width. So the majority of the township is R1. So if you are to build in the township, build your dream home, which a lot of people have, and they move into an R1 district, they have to have at least a minimum of 1 acre. Their parcel has to be 110 foot wide, and then they have to meet certain requirements in the ordinance like setbacks. It has to be 50 foot back, 50 foot from the rear, 20 from the side. And so as a community, we have the community development department. So if you come into Township Hall and you take a left, you go all the way to the end, you got DPW, and you got community development. There's some great people down there who are very helpful in regards to the process. Our assessing is down there, our building department is down there, planning folks are down there. So if you ever have a question on what you can do on your property or what your neighbor can do on their property, come down there and they'll be more than helpful. And so it's really the built environment where we start to get involved with the planning commission and the board. And that means commercial, industrial, or multifamily development. So if you're building a house, you don't have to go to the planning commission. Just follow the rules in regards to where it's set, turn in your building permits, and move forward. But if you want to build a commercial use in the township, or an industrial use, or say a multifamily use, almost anything in New Boston or Waltz, you've got to go through a much more detailed process. And that's important that you go through that process because there's potential impacts on your neighbors. And so we want the planning commission and the board to look at these proposals and check the ordinance and the master plan to make sure that they work. We have specific design standards in regards to how big a house can be. We're looking at ideas like tiny houses where you may want to have your mother-in-law, maybe not your mother-in-law, but maybe your kids in the back, right? Living in the back in a smaller home. And so we're looking at options like that. Those are all part of development standards. If you build something in downtown New Boston, you're required to make it brick or stone and have certain material for those businesses. And so those are all incorporated into the ordinance. And those are really important, guys, the development standards, because, and I'll tell you a quick story, is that years ago I was working in a small community and a Dollar General came in. And they turned in the plans and they were terrible. They were corrugated metal, and it was just a really atrocious looking building. And so they went to the planning commission, and I explained to the planning commission that they should have a brick facade and a pitched roof and all this landscaping. And the planning commission said, that sounds great. Well, then the applicant said, Mr. Enos, we'd love to do that, but if you can show me that in your ordinance, we'll do it. And right then and there, I learned something, was that if it's not in the ordinance, it's very difficult to require somebody to do that, because the court's gonna say that same thing. If it gets to court, the court will say, Mr. Enos, or whomever, Mr. Attorney, can you point in the ordinance where it says you can or can't do that? Because that's the law, and that's adopted. Let's go to the next slide. And who's involved in these zoning decisions? Who's been involved or built a commercial use in here, in the township? Anybody here? You see Dave. Joe Rickard's not raising his hand, but he's here. Who is involved? Well, if I come into Huron Township or I want to develop a commercial or industrial use in Huron Township, I'll typically check the website, or I'll call up community development and say, hey, I want to build a hamburger joint at this corner. And the township will look at the zoning ordinance and the master plan, and if it meets the zoning, so say it's at the corner of King and a lot of it's local commercial, we would say, okay, it's zoned for that. You can build a burger joint, but submit a site plan. And that process starts to go. They come in, they submit, they provide a application.